What if I told you the biggest mystery in From was never the monsters, never the forest, and never even the way out? What if the answer has been sitting in front of us this entire time, hidden in the way this town repeats itself over and over again? Because after everything Season 4 has shown us, Julie walking through past events, Tabitha remembering lives she never lived, Jade hearing songs buried inside his mind, and the man in yellow saying you cannot change the story, there's one conclusion that's becoming impossible to ignore. This town is not just cursed. It's a cursed book. And every person trapped inside it isn't living their life for the first time. They're rereading it. Think about that. Not surviving. Not escaping. Rereading. Same pain. Same deaths. Same choices. Different faces. And if that's true, then the real horror of From isn't being trapped in a place you can't escape. It's being trapped in a story that already knows how you end. That's what we're pulling apart today. Because once you see the town this way, everything changes. The monsters make sense. The trees make sense. Even the boy in white makes sense. And the most terrifying part? It may already explain how Season 4 ends. The first clue is hidden in a word the show gave us, and most people missed how important it really was. Near the end of Season 3, Julie came back from the dungeon completely shaken. She tried to explain to Ethan what happened. She talked about slipping backward, stepping into moments that had already happened, seeing people from the past like she was walking inside old memories. But Ethan didn't call it time travel. He called her a storywalker. That word matters. A storywalker, not someone who changes time. Someone who walks through chapters. That changes everything. Because chapters belong to stories. And stories are fixed. You can read them. You can revisit them. But unless the writer changes the page, the ending stays the same. That's exactly what Julie discovered. When she threw Boyd the rope in the dungeon, she didn't change the past. She fulfilled it. It had already happened. She was always there. That's not time travel. That's narrative. A story folding back on itself. And then Season 4 pushed that idea even harder. The man in yellow says something that sounds simple at first. You can't change the story. Not the timeline. Not fate. The story. That word is too specific to ignore. It means he understands the town differently than everyone else. Maybe better. And once you start looking at the town as a story instead of a place, everything begins to fit. Look at how people arrive. Always the same. A road. A fallen tree. Crows gathering like witnesses. A turn that should lead away but doesn't. That's not geography. That's an opening scene. Every single person enters on the same first page. Like the story has rules. Like the story has structure. Think about it. For a place that pulls people from all over the country, why does the entrance never change? Because stories always start the same way. Page 1. And then there's the cycle. This is where things get darker. Miranda wasn't the first chosen one. The show told us that clearly. There were others before her. People who saw visions. People who believed they could save the children. People who failed. That means this town has reset before. Again. And again. And again. Season 4 confirmed that even harder when Tabitha began remembering Miranda's life. Not as visions. As memories. That's the difference. And Jade? He remembered Christopher.
Not learned about him.
Remembered. That means they are not random people trapped here. They are recurring characters. Different bodies. Same roles. That's the terrifying truth. This story doesn't create new heroes. It recasts old ones. Over and over. Tabitha becomes Miranda. Jade becomes Christopher. And every cycle ends the same way. Failure. That's why the children keep saying one word. Remember. Not escape. Not run. Remember. Because the way out might not be forward. It might be backward. Memory might be the only weapon against repetition. And if this whole place is a cursed book, then forgetting is part of the curse. Every time the story resets, everyone loses the last reading. They start fresh. New names. New relationships. Same suffering. That would explain why Tabitha and Jade didn't recognize each other at first. Because the story wiped the slate clean. But not completely. Fragments leak through. dreams,
songs,
symbols, visions, pieces of earlier chapters bleeding into the new one. And that may be what the bottle trees really are. Not just portals, bookmarks.
Think about that.
Markers left behind from earlier readings. Proof that this book has been opened before. And maybe proof that someone wanted the next readers to find their place faster. Because if that's true, then somebody inside this story already figured out the pattern. And they may still be here, watching, waiting. And in the next part, we need to talk about the creatures. Because if this town is really a book, then the monsters aren't predators. There's something much worse. They're editors. If the town is a cursed book, then the creatures suddenly stop looking like monsters and start looking like something much stranger. Because think about how they behave. They don't run. They don't rush. They don't act like hunters. They smile. They talk. They wait. They drag everything out. That's not how predators kill. A wolf doesn't stand outside your door all night whispering your name. A predator wants the kill.
Fast, clean,
Efficient. But these things, they want tension,
fear,
build up. And that's exactly how horror stories work. A horror story does not reveal its monster on page 1. It stretches the dread. It lets fear breathe. And that's what these creatures do. They perform. Like actors repeating the same role every cycle. The smiling nurse, the cowboy, the milkman,
the bride.
They aren't random forms. They feel like characters pulled from old stories. Frozen archetypes. Almost like they belong to older chapters of the same cursed book. That may be why they look human. Not because they were human, but because stories need recognizable faces. Familiarity makes horror stronger. And here's the terrifying part. What if the creatures are not there to kill everyone? What if they're there to keep the story moving? That changes everything. Because a story needs conflict. Without conflict, there's no tension. Without tension, there's no reason to keep turning the page. That would explain why the town constantly gives people just enough hope to survive. Food appears. Shelter exists. The talismans work. The crops somehow grow. That's strange, isn't it? If the town wanted them dead, it could end this in days. No food. No protection. No chance. But it doesn't. It gives them enough to continue. Enough to struggle. Enough to hope. Because hope is fuel. And the show has practically screamed this at us. Hope feeds this place. Boyd says it. Father Cattry understood it. Even Abby touched on it. The town wants hope alive. Because hope keeps the story alive. And this is where the talismans become terrifying. Most people think they're protection. I think they're pacing. Look at what they do. They create safe spaces. Moments to breathe. Moments for characters to talk, connect, plan, dream. That's story structure. Without safe spaces, the whole narrative collapses into chaos. The talismans don't break the curse. They preserve it. They make sure the story lasts longer. That's why they work. Not to save people. To keep them readable. And then there's the forest. This is where the cursed book theory gets even stronger. Trees in From do not act like normal trees. They move. They shift. They bend space. The faraway trees throw people into random chapters of a story. Not random places. Think about where Boyd ended up. The dungeon. A place tied to Martin. A place tied to earlier cycles. Julie stepping into the ruins. Seeing things that already happened. These aren't locations. They're memories. The forest may not be physical at all. It may be the book's inner pages. Messy. Unfinished. Bleeding together. That's why Victor understands it better than anyone. Victor doesn't explain the town like a survivor. He explains it like someone who has read too much of it. He draws. Constantly. Page after page after page. That matters. Because drawing is recording. Preserving. Like he's terrified of forgetting. Like he knows memory disappears here. Victor might be the closest thing this story has to an archivist. Someone keeping scraps of earlier drafts alive.
And Ethan?
Ethan may be even more important. Because Ethan understands the rules instinctively. He frames everything like a quest. Like a story. That's not childish imagination. That may be awareness. He sees the structure, Because children understand stories better than adults. And if the town is a cursed book, Ethan may be one of the few characters reading it correctly. That's why the boy in white keeps appearing to children. Victor.
Ethan.
Maybe children are less trapped by the illusion because they still think in stories. Adults think in logic. Children think in patterns. And this town runs on patterns. That brings us to the boy in white. Because if the creatures are editors, then the boy in white may be something else entirely. Not a character, not a prisoner, but a guide. A living margin note inside the book. He never attacks. He only redirects, pushes, warns, shows pieces. He doesn't tell the whole truth. Because maybe he can't. Maybe his role is limited. Like a clue left by the original writer. And that means somebody wrote this. Not literally with pen and paper. But something created the structure. Something designed the repeating roles, the repeating deaths, the repeating hope. And there's only one character who behaves like he knows exactly how it works. The man in yellow. And in the final part, we need to talk about why he might not just be part of the story. He may be the one making sure it never ends. Everything leads back to one figure. The man in yellow. And if the cursed book theory is right, then he may be the closest thing this town has to an author. Not the creator, but the keeper. The one making sure the pages stay in order. Look at what separates him from everyone else. The creatures only come at night. He walks in daylight. The monsters hide underground. He moves freely. The town traps everyone else inside its rules. He acts like the rules answer to him. That alone makes him different. But it's what he says that matters most. Knowledge comes with a cost. That line sounds simple, but it explains everything. Every time someone gets close to understanding this place, something stops them. Jim hears the radio voice warning him. Tabitha gets pulled away when she gets too close. Boyd finds answers, but every answer leads to more suffering. Jade gets pieces of truth, but they almost break his mind. It keeps happening. Again and again. That's not coincidence. That's control. The story protects itself. Think about every mystery in From. Every time someone gets near the center, the path changes.
A death.
A distraction. A vision. A new crisis. The truth never arrives clean. It gets delayed. Like the story itself refuses to end. And if the man in yellow is the one enforcing that, then his real job is obvious. He protects the ending. Not because he wants to save anyone, but because endings are dangerous. Because if the characters ever fully understand the book they're trapped in, they might finally stop reading. That may be what escaping really means. Not leaving the town, but breaking the cycle, refusing the role. And suddenly, the biggest mystery in the show makes sense. Why can't anyone leave? Because they're not trapped by walls. They're trapped by narrative. Every choice pulls them back, because the story needs them. That's why roads loop. That's why trees move. That's why time bends. The book corrects itself. It keeps everyone inside the plot. And then there's the most important word in all of From. Remember. The children never say escape. That matters. They say remember. That may be the only real way out. Because memory breaks repetition. If Tabitha fully remembers Miranda, if Jade fully remembers Christopher, if Boyd understands his place in the cycle, then maybe they stop being characters. Maybe they become readers. And readers can close books. That may be the real war of Season 4. Not survival. Awareness. The town wants forgetting. The children want remembering. The man in yellow wants obedience. The boy in white wants understanding. And the people trapped in the middle don't even know they're part of it. But here's the darkest possibility of all. What if remembering isn't freedom? What if it's the trap? Jim raised this question for a reason. What if those memories are planted? What if the town wants them to believe in cycles because it keeps them chasing the same ending? That changes everything. Because then remember becomes bait. Hope disguised as truth. And that fits the pattern too. This place feeds on hope. What creates more hope than believing you were chosen? Believing this time will be different? Believing this time you can save everyone? That's the perfect trap. The perfect hook. The perfect reason to keep turning the page. Which means there are only two possibilities. Either the children are trying to wake them up, or they're the deepest part of the curse. And right now, we still don't know which is worse. But here's where all of this leaves me. The fallen tree, the crows, the road, the repeating roles, the monsters that perform, the talismans that pace, the faraway trees that skip chapters, the storywalker who can revisit scenes but never change them, the man in yellow guarding the truth, the children begging them to remember. None of it feels random anymore. It feels written, designed, structured. Like every person in this town is moving across pages that were printed long before they arrived. Same story, different faces. And maybe that's the true curse of From. Not that people are trapped in a nightmare, but that they've lived this nightmare before. And unless someone finds a way to break the book itself, they'll live it again.
And again.
And again. Until one day, somewhere on a quiet road, a tree falls across the path. The crows gather, someone turns around, and the book opens to page 1.